Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, and welcome to HR Foundation's Building a Thriving Team from Solopreneurship. My name is Michelle Eisenberg, and I am a program assistant at the NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center. And for those of you who may not know, the NASDAQ Center is a nonprofit building a better path for entrepreneurs worldwide by improving inclusion, access, and knowledge in entrepreneurship. As you will see in the chat in a moment, the NASDAQ Center provides programs, resources, and exceptional mentorship to entrepreneurs across all races, industries, and geographies. So definitely make sure to check out those links and resources posted in the chat. And then just a couple of housekeeping items before we get started. First, let us know where you are dialing in from in the chat. We always love to connect. And second, we're going to open up for live Q&A at the end of the event. So please make sure to submit your questions for us in the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen throughout the presentation. And we will try our best to get to as many of them as possible. And of course, none of what we do could be possible at the center without all of the amazing support from our sponsors, including NASDAQ, Lehigh University, Bank of the West, Airbnb, KPMG, Wilson Sonsini, Woodruff Sawyer, Microsoft Entrepreneurship for Positive Impact, BPM, and HubSpot for Startups. We are humbled by their contributions and hope you are grateful too. And so before we get started, we always like to launch a couple polls to see how everyone in the room is doing today. So this one's going to ask, how are you feeling? Fearful, anxious, surviving, or optimistic? Give it a few moments for everyone to respond. Awesome. Texas, Ohio, Michigan, San Francisco, Maryland. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for dialing in. All right, I'm going to end this poll and share these results. Looks like optimism is in the lead. We always love to see that, but we do have some feelings of surviving. Hopefully some of our conversation will help with those feelings today. I'm going to stop sharing this poll and launch the second poll. What is keeping you up at night? Finance, sales, marketing, scale, pivot, team, or surviving? This one tells us a little bit about your current entrepreneurial needs so that we can continue providing relevant content for all of you. Give this one a few more moments for everyone to respond. Thank you again for participating. All right, I'm going to end this poll and share these results. Neck and neck between finance and team, fitting for our conversation today. We are going to take this account for future programming. I'm going to stop sharing this poll. And without any further delay, please join me in giving a warm welcome to our moderator for the session, VR Small, founder and CEO of the Veteran Women's Enterprise Center. VR, it is so great to have you here for this conversation, and I am going to hand it right over to you.
Good morning, afternoon, everyone from wherever you are in the United States. As Michelle said, and I just want to say Michelle has been absolutely awesome to work with. The entire team from the NASDAQ Entrepreneur Center has just been amazing, and we're super excited to be partnering with them on this particular topic. The Veteran Women's Enterprise Center, for those of you who don't know, is a national initiative. We're headquartered here in Dallas, Texas at the Comerica Business HQ, but we are serving entrepreneur women associated with the military across more than 30 states. I hope one of yours. We have programming here in-house as well as our virtual programming. Everything can be found on our website at veteranwomensec.org. And if you ever have any questions or need more information, you can schedule an appointment from 15 minutes to an hour right on our website 24/7. So this session is exciting. As you know, coming out of COVID, we've been talking a lot about workforce, but we haven't talked as much as we should about small business workforce. And so today we definitely want to delve into what are those HR foundations? How can solo entrepreneurs build thriving teams to support the growth of their business? We're going to start by introducing you to our amazing panelists. First, I want to tell you a little bit about Tiffany. Tiffany Joan Lewis is a woman's fashion designer exclusively for tall. She was born in Memphis, Tennessee, and her fashion journey began at the young age of 14 when her mother invested in her first sewing machine. Standing 6'1", she became interested in sewing when she found it difficult to shop for clothing items that fit her tall frame. Focused on everyday wear, she specializes in pants, suits, floor-length dresses, and jumpsuits for women 5'9" and taller. Her goal has always been to help women feel beautiful day to day without the stress of shopping. She joined the military in 2011 and later finished her college journey online. She graduated with her business degree from the University of Memphis in 2016, fashion technology in 2021, and later her master's in leadership in 2023. Congratulations, Tiffany. She used her skills from the military, college, and fashion school to create a business. She began a journey of TJL Collections in 2019, a brand name from her father, Jones, and husband, Lewis, who pushed her to believe that she could start her own brand. The brand has become a personal community effort to bring more awareness for the lack of inclusion. She believes that tall women are overlooked and underserved in the fashion industry and uses her voice to create change. Outside of fashion, she loves to connect with women through events. She has produced more than 10 fashion shows, hosts numerous networking events, and hosts an annual vision board party, an annual Tall Girl meetup. She believes that confidence starts from the inside and radiates out. There is power in women coming together. Tiffany has a natural desire to continue to connect with women and youth through fashion. She loves to meet people and grow with other creators. Fashion is a way of life. And now we have Rachel. Rachel founded Mastermind Business Services in 2020 to change the world through operations. She works with her clients to eliminate the hurdles of running a growing service-based business through clear processes, a streamlined tech deck, stack, and the right team members in place. Rachel has over a decade of operations and people leadership experience, spanning several industries. This varied lived experience allows her to connect with clients where they're at and guide them to where they want to be. She lives just outside of Austin, Texas, with her wife, 2 kids, and 2 cats, all double trouble. When she isn't working, you can find her creative writing, cooking, playing board games, or having spontaneous dance parties with her family. Rachel. Hello, ladies. This is a great conversation for every business owner for us to begin talking about. And Tiffany, I'm going to start with you with a very simple question, I hope. It's really around your journey. So can you describe for me some of the main challenges you faced as a solo entrepreneur, running your business with no supporting staff? And then how those challenges have evolved since you started to hire new staff?
Hi, VR. Thank you for the introduction.
You're
Yes,
welcome.
so I've been a solopreneur. Well, I'm not a solopreneur anymore. I just started hiring, but my first 2 years were rough. And I learned every part of my business, from marketing to email to me and my husband did photography and editing. I learned every part of the business. So I appreciate that because, now I know my business in and out and I'm able to help train people properly. But the first 2 years were a lot.
And so how many years have you been in business?
So TJL turns 3 July 1st, but it wasn't my first venture. I actually had a boutique before I started the Tall brand. And I've always loved fashion. So I was doing the boutique and everything. And one of my friends was like, "You never wear the clothes that you sell." And I was like, "Because I can't fit them." And she was just like, "Well, why don't you make a Tall Girl brand?" And I was like, you're right. And so I switched from that. So I've been an entrepreneur about 8 years, but doing TJL for 3.
So Rachel, I want to get you in this conversation too. Tell me a little bit about some of the main challenges you faced as an entrepreneur, but you have an established team and you've done some hiring for other people. So tell us what that's looked like along your journey.
Yes, thank you for having me. So similar to Tiffany, when I first started, I was everything in my business, bookkeeper, marketing expert, operations person, although marketing expert might be a stretch for me. I'm on the ops side. And so starting out, because of my background, hiring and leading teams in corporate, I always knew I wanted to build my own team. And so that was a priority when I started my business. And in 2021, I transitioned into an agency model. So that allowed me to grow out a team that could help me support clients. So I could work with more clients in a larger capacity. And that journey has been full of learning because there's hiring for other people and there's hiring for yourself, and they are different. And so that was definitely a growing experience for me.
So Tiffany, tell me a little bit about the process. Everybody talks about bringing on staff, but when you started thinking, hey, I need help, what did that process look like for you? Like bringing on your very first person, and how did you determine what role they were going to play? Because you were playing so many roles. So what role do you give to this person? And how did you decide this is my priority? This is the first team member I need to bring on.
Yeah. So, like Rachel, I have a background in administration, but the difference is I was in the military. I was in the Navy. And so we don't actually hire the way that corporate America hires. Mm-hmm. So I had never done that process. You go through a recruitment process, right? And so that was the first difference for me. I really needed to understand actually writing acquisitions and figuring that thing out and like exactly what I needed people to do. I spent a lot of time writing, okay, where do I actually really need help? And I wrote out each job and like task and figuring out how to title those things, because I think you want to bring someone on and you're like, hey, come and help. And you're like, with what? What is going to be my role? What am I going to come and help with? So at the beginning, I really itemized out exactly the tasks that I needed help with and started tearing those off into job roles. I think the biggest hurdle for me was getting past thinking that each person was going to be paid like this substantial salary. And that's actually not true. Hiring maybe for marketing or email, you really learn that those people can work 2 to 3 hours a day or 2 to 3 times a week. And it really helps take the anxiety down because you're not paying everyone $75,000 salaries, right? Because I think that's what a lot of us think, but that's not what's reality, at least for my journey and what I needed help with.
Tiffany, I think that's a really good point. A lot of small business owners really believe they can't hire anybody, that no one would work for them because they can't afford those high-end salaries, and not realizing they don't really need somebody on full time. I think, Rachel, because you've done some hiring for other businesses, you could talk a little bit about this. How do you help your clients as well as your own process? How do I find that priority? Who's that first person I need to bring on? And what are the responsibilities I need to give them? Help other businesses understand, like, how do you start this process of building your team?
That's a great question. And so there's a couple different components that go into it. It is not an overnight success story. So similar to what Tiffany said, you want to analyze the tasks that are in your business and what it takes to run the day-to-day. And you also need to be honest with yourself about where your strengths and your weaknesses are. And then you want to look at where you see your business growing into. So not just what you need help with today, but what does your business need 6 months, 12 months, 2 years from now? And that will help you start prioritizing the areas of your business you need help in. Like, do you need support on the finance side? Okay, so what does that look like? Are you looking for someone to help you with tax strategy? Are you looking for someone to help you with your business budget? Are you looking for someone to just manage the bookkeeping of the business? Are you looking for operations support? Does that mean you need an assistant? Do you need help on client delivery? Are you looking for support around marketing? Like, you're trying to get more eyes on your business. And once you've narrowed down where the strengths and weaknesses for you as a founder, you know where you're going, then you can start to flesh out what those roles will look like. And it will allow you to more clearly articulate to your ideal candidate what it is that you need. And so you're going to call in better people who are more qualified to do the work that you need them to do.
So I'm going to ask both of you, because I know people get very kind of scared when you say, give me a job description, because now, like you said, they have to define those tasks. And we always want to say to people, hey, come and help me. And like Tiffany said, they say, well, help do what? So are there techniques, are there templates and information that can help a small business owner start saying, hey, these are the roles that I need? And if someone was going to say to me, hey, exactly what do you need me to do? And for how many hours do you need me to do it? How do I start to frame that out? Because you're doing it all. But now you need to bring in somebody else to do it. So how do you start to frame that out appropriately so that you know what this next person needs to do? And I know you guys have talked a little bit about looking into the future and looking at where you are now, but let's dig a little bit deeper into like, what is that process? What is that technique the business owner that's listening right now should start doing to look at how they're allocating their time and then how they want to allocate the time for the person they want to bring on?
I think for me, when you're the CEO, meaning doing it all, at least I was doing it all at one point, you don't have a lot of time. So you want to work smarter, not harder. I spend a lot of time looking at LinkedIn job descriptions, Indeed job descriptions at more established companies and mimicking some of the verbiage that they had. So I understood how they hired, because they were more established and I want to become established one day. So I did a lot of digging and researching on hiring hubs, or hubs that hire other people. But I think the biggest challenge when you're a solopreneur and you're constantly moving around is being able to slow down and actually onboard a person. That it will help you in the long run. I think sometimes we think, oh, I don't have time. I don't have time to write that. I don't have time to interview. I don't have time. But you're really going backwards, and being able to slow down, do the job description, onboard someone properly, and get them rolling so they can actually help you will give you more time later.
That's awesome. That's a good tip. Rachel, do you have any good tips for us along that line?
Yes. So job descriptions need to have a few essential components, right? You want it to tell your applicant about your company. So I usually like to kick off the top is the story, right? The story of the company. Like what does the company do? When was it founded? You know, why should you care? Basically, like what is the mission behind the brand? And then you want to talk about what would an ideal day in this role look like? So like what would be the responsibilities they would have, listing out some example like tasks, and talk about who the ideal candidate is. So like, are you looking for someone who, you know, is very attentive to detail? Is that like a priority? Are you looking for someone who's able to be, you know, a little more fluid with changing priorities, like naming those things clearly? And, you know, also telling them about you, especially as a solopreneur growing and hiring your first person, like you really are the business at this point. And so share a little bit about you. I usually link to a LinkedIn page, or if there's another social media page you use, so they can look at you and kind of get a feel for what your energy is and what the business is. And really choose a job, like choose the moment with a job description to let your company's personality shine through. Like this is where your values show up. This is where you can show how you are and, you know, what's important in your business. And so that's kind of my formula for writing a good job description.
I really like that piece about give them a description of a day at, you know, TJL, a day at Mastermind Businesses. This is what it looks like. You're going to come in, you're going to make some calls, you're going to do this, you're going to do that, you're going to meet with these people, you might have to travel here. So they really get an understanding of this is what the job looks like. I really love that. The other thing I think you led us into is what is the role that culture plays with a small business? We know how culture is important in big corporations, but as a small business, what does the role of culture play for you?
You know, culture is really big for TJL. And it's one of the things you read in my bio, which is like about confidence building and positivity. And if you were to come in my warehouse, it's positive messages all over the wall. It's positive messages that we like to tell our customers. If you experience our events, you will get. So that's something that I breathe through and through my children, through my life. And so I think personality definitely plays a part for me in my company. And it's not as specific as, oh, you need to be super confident. It's just you need to be able to fit in with what I'm trying to do to push us all forward and understand our language. And that's been a big thing, whether you're male or female, whether you're tall or not, understanding the culture that we're trying to breed. And it has to start with you because you interact with my customers. And especially I have 3 employees that are constantly interacting with my customers because they're at events with me all the time. And I spend a lot of time talking with them and writing positive messages. And one of the things that I've done with my last 3 employees when I onboarded them was I did an adjectives wall. And I had them write 25 adjectives out of things that really describes my branding and things like that. So they understand this is what TJL is and how we need to operate in it. And it really does trickle out and help when we're doing photo shoots and everything, because they understand now that I want to keep that way of thinking and that way of operating everywhere we go.
I love that, Tiffany. And Rachel, you not only build for your company, but you build for other people. How do you see businesses in the arena establishing culture and creating that mindset? One of my favorite things that I always talk about, because my background is in organizational development, is how do you create that shared vision? And it's not just something you write on a piece of paper and you say, but how do you make sure what that staff member is trying to achieve aligns with what your company is trying to achieve, so you're both kind of heading in the same direction?
That's a great question. And Tiffany, I love the adjective wall. That's a really creative thing to bring them into the values of your business. So I found something that I like to say is culture isn't just your team. Culture is everyone's experience with your company. And so that includes your clients or your customers. And it's important to know that if you're not intentionally developing your culture, that it's developing on its own. And, it doesn't just not happen because you're not putting energy into it. And so with myself and with clients, what are your values? Like, what matters to the business and what matters to you, and start there. And so for me, a culture of collaboration is very important. And so that's something that I really encourage and foster with my team. Like, we're all very active in Slack, where we help each other out. We talk about, all these different, when a new tech tool comes out, like, we talk about it as a team. Like, all of these things just stay in collaboration. And with clients, I try to help them look at what their values are and what their vision is for the company, and marry that to start developing that culture or to build on what's already there. If you come from it with a heart for people, that will show up, even if you feel a little overwhelmed as you start of like, what does building culture even mean? If you come into every situation thinking about the best result for you and that other person, that's always a good foundation.
You're muted, Bia.
I love that, because as a business owner, you really have to make sure that you're maintaining your culture, because it is small and you don't want people to come in and kind of take you in a different direction. But Rachel, you hit on something that I think is very important. You may be small, but you still have to figure out how are you going to share information in a timely fashion, and how are you going to make sure that all of the people on your team collaborate. And I know you mentioned Slack, but I love for either one of you to share other tools that you use to collaborate with your team members. And how do you make sure that relevant information is being shared in a timely fashion, so everybody knows what's going on, everybody knows where they need to be, and how they can collaborate with the other members of your team? Rachel, you want to start? Because I know you talked a little bit about Slack and collaboration, so I'll let you dig a little deeper into that.
Of course. So I know some people don't like Slack, but I love Slack. And it's been a great way to connect, because I have it, my team is spread out. So I've got people who aren't in the States, and, different time zones. You can turn off your notifications. So it's like leaving a voicemail, but with text. We have team meetings regularly, so we'll come on Zoom and get to like catch up, not just about business, but like as people. Project management tools are great to keep track of tasks to make sure that the work is moving forward. And Google Workspace is like the Google suite of tools is my favorite. Love Google, live and die in my calendar. And it also allows easy collaboration. So like we can all be editing like a spreadsheet or a Google Doc together, even at different times. And it's very open and allows a lot of, input from different people across the team.
I like that. Tiffany, do you have any tips?
About the same. I don't like Slack. I'm not a group message type person, but we definitely do Zoom meetings, emails. I send texts out. I mean, and I'm building processes now actually. So that's another thing when you're a brand new business, right? Who creates your processes? Who creates your onboarding? Who create me? So I'm literally now creating onboarding books and how to do this and how to do that, right? As we bring in new people, because it gets more complex, more people now, and I'm building all of that. So we're putting those pieces in place via Google and sharing docs to edit and things like that so that we can have a great process.
I love that. One of the other questions I really wanted to ask, because I think this is a true challenge for small business owners, how do you deal with competing tasks, competing demands on you? So I brought you on to do X, but now I'm kind of overwhelmed with Y and T. How do you make sure that you're getting the important things done, that you're not overwhelming your staff members, that you brought on to do one thing, but now you're asking them to do another? How do you manage all of that so you don't find a person going home saying, wait a minute, I'm doing like 3 jobs here and they only hired me to do one? And that can happen because as a CEO, like Tiffany said, we're doing everything, everybody's job, but you can't expect other people to have that same passion and that same commitment to do everybody's job. So how do you deal with that?
Well, again, I'm a veteran. I'm a military girl. So I think of things a little different because you're not able to quit. You're not able to let people go. It's a lot of different things. So I don't have that mindset immediately of like, bye. But in culture, on the subject of culture, they're growing with me. I let them know like we're growing this business together. And some days I really look for flexible people who can think quickly, who can who have forward thinking and hopeful thinking, optimistic thinking, things like that, because I'm a small brand, and making sure that culturally they understand that I'm transparent with things, not everything, but I'm transparent in the growing of things and how we're building. That really helps. And then also figuring out different people's skill sets, because again, in the military, I learned that I may have had one job role, but I could have been great at something else. And they cross-trained me on things, and letting people help you in places that you need help and rewarding them in those things that, hey, you're really great at this. I know I brought you for this, but you can help me somewhere else. And again, culturally, we're growing, we're building together. So I try to keep that in mind and at the forefront so that I can retain people so they understand what's happening with the brand when it's hectic and crazy and things like that.
That's awesome. Rachel, you have some tips for us, for you, and also for some of your clients, how they've addressed it?
Yeah, I love what Tiffany was talking about, really assessing what someone's skills are, because there's the job description and then there's also what they love. And it's not always the same thing. There's that zone of excellence, zone of genius thing. So like my zone of genius is general operations, but my zone of excellence is team development. And, they're kind of similar and also kind of different. And so finding that out about your team is important. And also as a founder, one of the hardest pills to swallow is very rarely will you hire someone who cares about the business as much as you do. They might care as much as
Mm.
they can, but it's your baby. This is your business. And at the end of the day, it's your responsibility. And of course, they're responsible for their role. But I think a trap that I've seen people get into is that getting upset because someone doesn't care the way you care. And like, they're not going to be up till 2 a.m. working on your social media because that's not what they're there for. And so going into it with realistic expectations as the founder, and, you know, if you're clear when you hire and you treat your people well, then they generally put in the work that you need to move the business forward. And so, you know, open lines of communication, making sure that you are checking in with them on their capacity and their workload, because you don't want to be that person who's burning out your team. Like you would have hated that. You don't want to do that to someone else. So make sure that you have those open lines of communication and you're checking in on their capacity.
I like that. And I think that leads very well into one other thing I want the two of you to talk about. And that's like determining the type of staff person that you wanted to bring on, whether that person was part-time, full-time, contracted, outsourced. You know, what are some of the things you looked at and what helped you make the decision about what type of staff person you wanted to bring on? And do you have multiple, you know, levels of staff people within your current business, or have you had them in the past? And Tiffany, I'll let you start since you kind of new to this game. What were some of the decisions you made? And how did you decide, hey, this is how I'm going to bring my team on?
So I have 6 people that are currently working for TJL Collection. All of them are contractors at the moment. And I did that too for just longevity. I'm still a new company. We only be at 3 years in July. So I want to keep my company and I didn't want to exhaust funding out too quickly, being a small business and a growing business, but a small business, and also being fair with hours. So that's a big thing, figuring out people's schedules. And then some people work more hours than others, but then some people's job roles did not warrant a lot of hours. Like I have someone who currently sends out my emails and text messages. They set them up on Monday for the week. It's no need to really do much more. So they work as a contractor for a lot of businesses. And I think figuring out where you need help. I needed help in that space because I didn't want to sit down and put the emails together and do the research and all of that to make them pretty, and graphics is not my thing. So, but I found someone who could do it, but I also realized it wasn't as expensive as I thought it was. So our staff grew in realizing that everyone, again, didn't need to be paid like these tremendous salaries. You can have people work as contractors, or you can have people work even one of my virtual assistants, she only works 2 hours a day. That's it. You know, she checks my emails 2 hours a day. She does some replying back, and that's it. And my social media person sends me graphics twice a week. You know, it helps take pressure off of me, but it's not the same type of work that I do. So, you know, you can have a large staff and grow your staff without feeling overwhelmed by that.
Yeah, Tiffany, talk a little bit. I think you named like 2 of your staff members and you're up to 6. Talk a little bit about the type of people that you have on your team right now.
So we have like a social media person. I have 2 assistants that's like with me majority of the time. And then I have an operations manager. She comes in shipment days. Like she comes in every now and then. So she's not even at the warehouse every day. She helps us with like reorganizing, looking through things to make sure our processes look good as far as how we ship things, how we process our returns back. We ship international. So we ship all over the world. And so I just have a second set of eyes who's better in operations. But she's not there all the time because we don't get shipments all the time. So she helps us during different seasons of the year. And then I have email, you know, my email text person, my social media graphics person. So different people do different things for different reasons, but those are places I knew I needed help.
I love that. And Rachel, can you share a little bit about that? Because, you know, letting go of control and then, you know, delegating the right task. I love what Tiffany's doing. Like she saw things that were burdening her. She said, look, I'm not good at this. I don't want to spend my time doing it. and realize, because a lot of times we automatically assume, oh, I can't afford that, or I can't do that, but you haven't really done your research to investigate it. And then when you look into it, you're like, wow, I wish I would have hired this person a year ago, because it wouldn't have cost me that much, but it would have benefited me tremendously. So can you share a little bit of the tips you share with your businesses and what you do in your own business around delegating, finding those right people? And I think you have a team of 5. If you could share a little bit about what your team looks like.
Yeah, no, this is great because Tiffany has the product-based business and I'm a service provider. And so I went a different route when hiring. For my agency, I have subcontractors, so they are 1099 and they help me in the client delivery. So they're not helping me as much in my internal side of the business, but in the client delivery. So I went, as the work and the demand from clients grew, you hit a ceiling with how much you can do yourself. And so I strategically hired experts. I looked for people who were smarter than me and who were better than me to bring in to help my clients and to help me so I can focus on the side of the business that is the internal piece. So my team is comprised of project managers and system strategists because of the nature of what we do for clients. And it works out to be contractors right now because we only work on a project basis in the agency right now. So we're not having like monthly retained clients who need consistent services. We work on projects that could be anywhere from 3 to 12 months at a time. And so it made sense to bring in contractors and not carry that overhead of an employee at this moment in my business. And so for me with delegating, I've had internal staff, like I've had assistants and copywriters and marketing people in and out over the last 3 years. And part of the reason why I hire the people is either because I need to free up my time, because when you break down what your time costs as the salesperson of the business, do you want to, be spending a couple $100 an hour to check emails or to schedule a social media post? Like, no. So when you break it down that way, paying someone, $45 an hour is actually saving you money because you're spending that time on sales. And so when you're looking at delegating, it's always hard, but it can really ruin your hiring experience, because if you're not delegating, then it feels like they're not actually contributing. So then you start to be resentful because you're spending the money on paying them and they're not taking things off your plate. So really, again, getting clear on what you want. And then Tiffany named it really well, of trying to get some of those processes down so that they can support you. And, if your first hire is someone in the admin ops space and you don't have a process, their first project can be shadowing you. You can be recording videos and they can be writing out the process in a written format. Like, this is something that, I've seen done often in the ops space, like getting them into it, because you need to be able to get it out of your head to delegate it to someone. And so you can't expect someone to come into your business having all of the background that you have in your company and for your clients. You need to have that information share with them.
I like that. I think that there were a couple of really good points here around making sure that you delegate, because you bring people on, but then you don't want to release anything to them. So you're kind of paying for them to do nothing. And then also making sure that you start creating those processes. Those processes are going to help you a lot, because now you just hand somebody a piece of paper. Here, I need you to handle blank, and this is how we handle it. I need you to do this, and this is how it's done. And it's written out on a piece of paper, and so they can look at it, ask you any quick questions, and then they can just go and do it. And they don't have to stop you 20 times during the day to say, what about this? Or was this okay? Or how do I do this? So those are really good points, ladies. And I think a lot of small business owners, Tiffany said at the very beginning, we don't have time, but you have to make the time, because that's the time that's going to allow you to do more sales so you can generate more revenue, so you can grow your business and give these tasks that don't generate revenues and that don't close deals to other people, because they're not money makers for you. I love that. So everybody's worried about risk. I bring on a virtual assistant. I get them access to my email. They've got my passwords. How do you minimize risk when you're bringing these new people into your fold? We're always hearing about people taking folks' data, or people like messing up something because they have an issue. As a small business owner, what are the strategies you guys are using to minimize risk as you bring these people into your fold and get them access to your clients and your client data? Rachel, why don't you tell us a little bit from your perspective, because you not only work with clients, but you're doing it for yourself. What does that look like?
Yeah, so as a all digital cloud-based business, was a initial like primary concern and is still an ongoing like thought for myself and clients. So I like to use password sharing tools. So I'm not giving someone my actual password. I'm like a LastPass or 1Password. So I'm sharing with them so I can still change the password and they can actually see it. And then when you're hiring someone, even independent contractors have independent contractor agreements. Like make sure you're reading that through and you're being clear about, what they can do as far as having like not poaching your clients, right? Like they're not going to come in and they can take your client Deborah and go run with it. But, really qualifying in the hiring process helps with that. And also, not giving out your passwords. I really I always caution clients not to give people your direct password because then they can lock you out. I mean, you always want to come at it from an optimistic place and plan for the worst case scenario when you're hiring as a business owner. Like you don't want to hire people assuming they're going to do you wrong. And also you have to have that, compliance and prevention mindset because you are the owner of the business. So I always like to say, hope for the best, plan for the worst when you're hiring.
Tiffany, what have you learned in this process?
So I'm not actually as much a service-based business as Rachel. So the system, so I use Shopify, I use Klaviyo. A lot of the systems that I use, you can actually set certain permissions for people. And that's one thing I'm very big on. So I don't give all permissions out. Even I have someone who runs my Facebook ads and my Instagram ads for me. She doesn't give full permissions. So you can really set permissions for people so that they're not able to have access to everything that you have access to using those controls and stuff like that. But even for, I would just say like my VA, I created a separate admin email. So it's not my main email. It's an admin email that my team uses. And so they can like make communications through there for things. But so I don't give people full access to everything through the systems that I use. And that's mainly how I'm able to do that. And then with even like my social media marketing person, we share things via Google or Dropbox. So I share images through there and then they send me the finished images back and things like that so I can save. So that way it's not something they have full access to either. So I really keep people out of all my full permission.
I like that. And when you have your virtual assistant that kind of manages your email, you said they're using a different email than your actual email account. Good info.
Yes, I made her info ad or a Rachel ad email that it comes through there, but it comes to my main email, but she doesn't email out from that. So that way she doesn't have the same password as well as the main. I'm not as tech savvy, so I'm probably not saying it, the language the best, but
you know
she
what,
doesn't have
Tiffany?
full access to my email.
But you just let everybody else know that, hey, there's a process by which if you want to hire a virtual assistant, that you can give them access without giving them full access or the ability to pretend to be you if they get mad at you or they have a problem. And I think there's a lot of people that may not know that. So you may not know how to do it or what it's called, but now you know, hey, if I want to do this, I need to connect with an IT person. One, I need to set up some password codes so that I can give people full access to. I need that pass-through. I may not know what it's called, but this is what I want to set up for my virtual assistant so that they're not actually in my box, but they can see what comes in my box and then translate that back to me. So those were excellent points. We don't have to know all the answers, but sharing what you've done, what you've been able to achieve, what you've done, kind of jogs everybody else's memory. And then they say, okay, how do I do that? So we're going close to the end, and I really want to give you guys an opportunity to just kind of give that point right now. We've talked about a number of different things, but is there something that we talked about that you wanted to give a little bit more on? We kind of moved on, or somebody said something, Rachel said something that moved you, Tiffany, or Tiffany, you said something, Rachel, and moved you, and we kind of went to another question. Is there anything you want to share about what we talked about now before we open up to the Q&A?
I think I just want to end with making sure you know your task and what's needed. I don't know if you all ever, worked a regular job and they onboard you and you sit for like 2 weeks because nobody tells you what to do. Nobody, you have, and as a small business, we don't have that type of funding to just let people sit and eat away at our funds, at our payroll for 2 weeks. At least I didn't have 2 weeks. So being quick with onboarding, being very thorough with explaining tasks and allowing people to come in and truly help you. My assistant's very first day, I just had her help me reorganize and relabel our boxes, help us clean up things and get things better organized. It's always something people can do. You just have to tell them. You have to tell them what to do. And I think as CEOs, we can get a little frustrated, as VR said, that people aren't doing what you need them to do, but they can't reach your mind. And I think if I've learned anything, is to explain and give tasks out and let people know exactly where I need the help.
That's awesome. Rachel?
Yeah, so we started to talk about transition, like when you should hire a contractor or an employee. And something that I did just want to add is there are some legal and financial differences between a contractor and an employee. And so you want to make sure as a business owner that you have educated yourself or found someone to help you learn the differences, because you don't want to, tick off the IRS. If you're treating a contractor like an employee, that can be a legal or financial ramification. So if you're at a place where you think you're ready for an employee, it's worth the expense to talk to an expert. So you're looking for, someone to talk to you about labor law or HR liability, and someone on the financial side, like your accountant would be a great resource to start with. Because if you're ready for an employee, you probably already have someone on your finance team. So I would start there and ask them for recommendations.
So I want to reach back out to Michelle because we're ready for Q&A. And have Michelle join us, and she's going to kind of lead this Q&A session. So how do we do, Michelle?
Awesome. This was such an amazing conversation. Thank you all for your stories from your business journey. Such incredible tips. It was just so amazing. And I love the enthusiasm around what you're doing and bringing on people that really care about supporting that. So we have some great questions coming into the Q&A box. If you have any, please drop them in. We'll try to get to as many as possible. So I'm just going to jump right in. So first, we have a question about, advice around hiring interns as opposed to kind of like the contractors that we've discussed in more details. So like Rachel, I know you've maybe had experience hiring for corporate. Do you have any advice in regards to like hiring for interns and how that might be different, or is that not really in your wheelhouse?
So the legal structuring around hiring interns is a little more complicated than hiring a contractor. So I would really recommend that if that's something you're looking at, you find an expert in your state in that space, because there can be a little bit more around, making sure you're giving them, college credit, or like, there's some different pieces in that. And so if you're looking at hiring an intern and you're not looking at hiring someone who's in college, then you're probably looking at hiring like a contractor who maybe they come in at a reduced rate for what you would normally pay, and you trade off of experience and time, not for no money, but a trade-off between you two where they're learning, so they're agreeing to a reduced rate or something along those lines.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's super helpful. And just staying on the point of payment and wages for a moment, and Tiffany, you can feel free to jump in as well for this one. Can you talk a little bit more about like how you determined wages? For example, someone was asking about like oh, should I pay them like project-based fees or like an hourly wage? Like, how did you kind of come to those determinations?
I think with that one, for the rate, you want to look at what's industry standard, doing research there, as far as that. And there are places that you can get contractors like Fiverr and stuff like this. So they'll have their rates on there regardless. So it's not something that you can choose. But for me personally, I really think it's important to know what they're going to be doing, because if you're not needing them, like, again, I explained, my email person only sets them up once a week. So it was no need for us to do like hourly like that. I pay him one rate for the month to set up this many emails and segment things out for me, right? So it just depends on what you need. That's why you have to be extremely clear on what it is that you need, so that you're not overpaying someone you may not necessarily need to pay them that many hours for things like that.
Yeah, that's super great advice. Awesome. All right, Rachel, anything you wanted to add before I jump into the next question?
Yeah, so my team right now is project-based. And so depending on the way it's structured for the work I'm billing to the client, is the way the team bills to me sometimes. But like contractors, you can't set their rate, they set their rate. So I know what my budget is. And when I'm looking for someone, I tell them like, this is my budget. And so everyone knows before we get to that next stage of what I can afford. And there's not this, where someone's like, I'm $125 an hour and my budget was $70. And so when I'm looking at that, like there's some of my team, I've got project managers, and when we do a process development session, they charge me a flat rate, but I also charge my client a flat rate, because billing something like that by the hour doesn't account for the experience and expertise that go into it.
Right. And that kind of goes back to what Tiffany was saying about like doing your research into like the industry and the role and like what that requires. And it's just such important points. Awesome. So we have a great question from the audience that I think is relevant to a lot of people. So, we have a lot of entrepreneurs in the community who are, at a pre-revenue stage. And so how might they think about their ability to hire a contractor or add some kind of team support at that stage? And if so, what might that look like?
I know there's a lot of people in Texas. Texas actually has government funding that will allow you employees. You have to register your business. I forget. I'll research the name of the site and try to drop it in the chat. But the state has, and this is just a resource, the state has resources to give you an employee for 6 months, and they will actually pay that person.
Oh, wow.
And it's something that they do for small businesses as well. So, it's all type of ways to pay people. And then just say you're not really at pre-revenue. I mean, you're at pre-revenue and you're not making as much. Really fine-tuning and saying, like, I know my first hire, I hired my first assistant because I really needed help. And I wasn't really generating the funding that I'm generating now. My biggest thing was, what can she help me produce that will help me produce funding right away? So that may mean hiring a social media person. If you're falling short in social media, right, then you need to hire the most pertinent thing right away that will help you generate funding. That person that will help you get to the money the quickest. So figuring out what role that is and saying like, okay, in 2 weeks, if we can bust out more reels or more videos. And again, I'm a product-based business, but thinking about it like that, that's how the money started coming, because I got the assistance to do those things that generate funding for me.
Right. Absolutely. Those things are totally tied into each other. Rachel, anything you wanted to add there?
No, the only thing I would add is if you're hiring someone pre-revenue, you really want to make sure that they're doing something that's moving you to revenue, because it feels even tighter if you don't have the revenue yet.
Absolutely.
And
love it.
Michelle, I will add a piece on there around interns. I worked in the university arena, and we have had great experience with interns who are credit-based. So this intern has a marketing project or a finance project or a technology project that they have to do for a grade. I've found that those particular interns have been phenomenal because they want their grade. More so than somebody you're paying a fee to. And also in the learning process, they're anxious to learn, they're anxious to do a good job because this is what they do. This is what their degree is in. They're very excited about it. So don't sleep that pre-revenue, because that is free. But you absolutely have to have what both Tiffany and Rachel talked about, an outline.
Right.
That professor is going to want to know exactly what that intern is going to do, exactly what that final outcome looks like. It is extremely project-based. It has an in and a beginning and an end, but it is a phenomenal resource. So if you have a university near you, if you graduated from a local university, you're an alumni, you need to access that resource, because those young people like you, when you were in college, are exceptional. and they are a great resource.
Amazing. Love it. Awesome. So we have a really interesting question here about, how, and Tiffany, Rachel, feel free, whoever, to kind of take this one. How have you kind of worked to protect the integrity of your product or service as you've brought on new team members and had them like advocate on behalf of your business and whatever their designated role may be?
For me, I'm very deeply involved in my client's experience with my brand. And so that is part of my culture. And so the culture of excellence and, not that retail customers always right mindset per se, but the end goal is our client's success. And so we're successful when our client's successful. So if we have exhausted every avenue to provide them an excellent experience, at the end of the day, that's what I'm expecting. And so I look for that. I look for people who value excellence and are at the top of their game when I bring them in. And then I'm still deeply involved in my clients' touch points with the team. So, I can see what's happening. And so I'm aware of how things are going. And so if I ever needed to step in, I could.
Awesome. Tiffany, anything you wanted to add there?
Yeah, I agree. Just reiterating that culture. So one of the things that I do in our team meetings, we talk about our return customer rates and how things, what customers were saying, looking at our reviews. Again, breeding this culture of like, this affects us all because we're growing together, and making sure we're reiterating those things that, hey, this month y'all did great. We had very minimum returns, packages look good, things like that. And when it's not, fixing those areas that aren't. And I say it as a we thing because it's a we in the team. But as far as speaking on behalf of customers, I only really have myself and one other person really speak on behalf of the brand. And figuring out where you're best at, right? I love talking to my customers so they get a lot of me, but and then everyone does everything else. But I'll even give like an example. Me and my email guy, he's overseas. We have meetings once a month. And I really reiterate my company culture with him because of the wording he uses in my emails. I don't even like words that aren't TJL going out, in my emails, because that's what my customers receive. And really dedicating time to explain things in the way you want your brand to look. Even though he's triggering them, I need him to say it in my language, in my way, so that it goes out in the way that I approve of.
Love it. Awesome. All right. We are out of time. This has been such an amazing conversation. I know VR kind of already asked you guys for kind of a closing remark, but I'll go to Tiffany first and then Rachel. If you had just one piece of advice from either this conversation or even just separately from your business journey as a leader, what would you want to leave with the audience?
Just take things one person at a time, one task at a time, one job at a time, one day at a time. It's very important because we always have super long lists as entrepreneurs. We get it down, it piles back up again, it never stops. But if you take things one thing at a time, it really does help make you go a lot further along the way.
Love it. Rachel, how about you?
Yeah, so everyone's overwhelmed when making their first hires. Everyone freaks out about it. Even if you've done it in corporate, hiring for yourself is a different animal. And, just know that fear can't keep you from expanding. And, this another one of those founder mindset things that you have to work on. And so if it's time for you to hire and it's your first hire particularly, like make sure you're leading with collaboration, open communication, and candor. If you're being honest and you're communicating clearly, it gives them the room to do that. And that will make your relationship start off so much more smoothly.
Awesome. VR, Rachel, Tiffany, thank you all so much for joining us for this conversation. Your insights were so incredible. And on behalf of the NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center and everyone who attended today, we are just so grateful that you all joined us. And
thank you guys for being a panelist. Thank you, Michelle, for joining forces with us. For those of you who are in the DFW area, we have another hour here at the Comerica Business HQ. Come network, enjoy light lunch with us. We're excited to see you again and get everybody back out. So Thank you again for this time, and I hope it was really, really useful. So looking for those next hires for everyone.
Awesome. And for those of you in the audience, we'd love for you to join us for upcoming webinars, which you can view using the link in the chat. And thank you all so much for joining us today. We look forward to welcoming you back online with us soon.